Welcome everyone to the Thursday edition of our Packers News live chat alongside Pete Dougherty. I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers hit the field for the final time this week, gearing up for their game on Sunday against the Tennessee Titans. We'll take a look at today's practice, let you know who participated, who didn't. Plus, we'll also look ahead to this weekend's game. Before we get into that, as always, you know the drill. You can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. Pete and I will hear from you. We'll get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our conversation today. Running back Jamal Williams did not practice for a third consecutive day as he's dealing with a quad injury. The Packers are lucky to have some depth at running back. Running backs Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are expected to be good and ready to go for this upcoming Sunday's game against the Titans. A.J. Dillon has only touched the ball once in the last two games after coming off of COVID-19 reserve, where he spent 5 weeks. How prepared is A.J. Dillon to potentially shoulder a bigger load on Sunday?
I don't know. He's next in line. You would think, even though, they're probably open to playing Jones more than he had earlier in the season, they still want to limit his touches somewhat. So I would think at most he'd play, 70% of the snaps, maybe 75. That's still, enough snaps left over where maybe we actually will see, Dillon on the field for double digits snaps for the first time this year. He missed a lot of practice there in those 5 weeks, but he did. He got through training camp and had all those practices before then. So, running back is probably the position where rookies can contribute the most. Although obviously Dillon has hardly played at all.
Let's take a look ahead to this weekend's game against the Titans. The Titans' offense is very successful. They are number one in scoring in the NFL. The defense, however, is in a much different position. They have really struggled getting after the quarterback this season. They rank last in the league in sacks with 14 total. They haven't been able to get after the quarterback in the last 3 games at all. How much of an upper hand do the Packers' offense have in this game?
It should be a nice advantage. They don't have a top rusher, so they don't have a guy you've really got to gear your protection towards, which when you have a guy like that, that should help out other guys rushing. With the Packers' ability to run the ball, that slows the rush down, and their line is playing well. So I think you throw those things together, you would think this is a game where Rodgers will have, a decent amount of time to throw. Now, he's been getting the ball out fast, and I would think the Packers want to keep doing that and keeping things on rhythm. But, if you're going through and making a list of advantages, disadvantages, that's a big check mark on the Packers side there.
On paper, these Titans and Packers offenses look very similar. The Titans, like I mentioned, are ranked first in the league in scoring. The Packers are third in the league in scoring. The defenses are a little bit different. The Packers defense, for all of their shortcomings this season, are 14th in scoring, while the Titans are 21st. Who has the upper hand overall in this game?
Yeah, I don't, it's a tough one to pick. I think the Packers are +4. Do you know who you're picking to win this one? We don't have to do our picks until tomorrow.
I picked the Packers to win, Pete.
I probably will too, but I'm not sure. I'm still not sure. Henry is, he's going to be a big problem for these guys. And, he's the best back in the league. He's a power guy, and the one thing with the Titans is they're not going to give up on the run like I think some of the teams the Packers have played the last few weeks have. So I think this is, just one of the most interesting games on the Packers schedule, and a game that could be pretty revealing about where the Packers really are. They're obviously a good team. The last 4 games, they've moved up the charts on defense. I think they've played better on defense, and some guys are – Barnes, Martin, Savage, guys are playing better. And that's one of the reasons the defense is better, but they still have been playing against teams that, lesser, bottom half of the league teams, maybe even bottom third offenses. And now they're going against a team that's leading the league in scoring. So I just think this will be a really interesting game to get a little better sense of just how much improvement the Packers defense has made in the last, month or so.
You can check out our predictions over the next couple of days leading up to Sunday night's game. We'll give you our thoughts over there. I encourage you to take a look. Let's put on our meteorologist caps. Why not? Finally, there's going to be some true football weather. December football at Lambeau Field in the Packers' final home game. A low of 17 degrees, 50% chance of snow showers, and winds ranging from 10 to 15 miles per hour. How will the weather impact the game plans on both sides?
If the ball's slippery, it always makes throwing a little tougher. 15-mile-an-hour winds aren't that strong, but they'll still notice it. And with the way it swirls in Lambeau, you never know. It could be a little bit of a factor. If I'm Tennessee, I'm fine with bad elements. You got Henry, and he's a huge back who's really good, and you're going to run the ball. So I would think they would be right at home playing in bad elements.
Let's head over to Facebook, Periscope, and YouTube for some of your questions. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us today on Christmas Eve. If you are celebrating Christmas tomorrow, Merry Christmas. Let's start with Josh over on Facebook. Josh asks, you like the new graphic? Pretty cool, right? If the Packers have nothing to lose, should the Packers start quarterback Jordan Love in the last game of the season to get him some game action? Presumably, if the Packers win against the Titans, they automatically clinch the top seed in the NFC. Next week's game against the Chicago Bears does not theoretically mean anything. Could always boost some confidence, some morale against a division opponent. However, how important is it that rookie quarterback Jordan Love or backup quarterback Tim Boyle gets some reps next week if the Packers are in the position to put them in?
I would play him some. I've just got to think that, there's no way it would be Love because, and we've talked about this before, but the number 2 in practice all week only gets one or, just a couple snaps with the starting offense. And then when they flip-flop and they're doing scout teams, so they're running the opponent's offense, the number 2 gets all those snaps and the number 3 gets, 2 or 3 or 4 snaps all practice. So Love's hardly had any practices. Now, it sounds like they've done an extra period after a lot of practices with the practice squad guys and young guys to give him a period. But he's still had so few snaps. I just don't know if I see much value in putting him out there. I would think it would be Boyle instead of him. And this is something they'd have to think about because if they had the best record wrapped up, I don't know that I would completely sit Rodgers for that last game because then that means he'll have had the starting offense will have gone 2 full weeks without playing. 1 week is a good rest and getting guys healthy. 2 weeks, I think, you really risk some staleness. So I might start Rodgers and maybe play him the first half and then go with Boyle. I'd at least think really hard about it. I don't think it would be a given that Rodgers wouldn't play at all if the Packers had everything wrapped up.
The Packers can't get too much ahead of themselves, still have to win this game against the Titans. We'll revisit that thought next week, perhaps, if the Packers win this weekend. Let's go over to Periscope to our friend Smumster. Good to see you. They want to know, why did the Packers sign a kicker to the practice squad? Is kicker Mason Crosby hurt? The Packers signed kicker J.J. Molson to the practice squad. If that last name sounds familiar to you, perhaps it sounds like the name of a beer sitting in your refrigerator. It's because he is the 8th generation descendant of John Molson, who founded the Molson Brewery in the 1700s, which is very fascinating, very interesting. I wish we had some access to J.J. Molson. However, we're not allowed to talk to practice squad players. We'll never get to talk to him. If he's still on the team next season, maybe we will. However, why did the Packers decide to sign a kicker to the practice squad, given the fact that currently Mason Crosby is healthy?
I'd be curious to know what you think. I'm guessing it's, part because he did have that calf injury. Maybe they fear him aggravating it. And, they've got that COVID waiting period with guys where, they've got to go, 5 days or whatever. So if he aggravated it during a game, it would be, the next week they'd really have to move fast to get somebody in who could kick in the game. And that guy wouldn't even be able to practice until he'd been in Green Bay in quarantine for, I think it's 5 days. I know the rules only have changed a little bit, but so I'm thinking they just want somebody ready to go in case somebody gets hurt, and they've got 15 practice squad guys, so they feel they have that luxury. There probably is something I'm forgetting or just not knowing there. So I don't know what you think the reason is that they signed him.
It seems like they have been working out kickers all season long throughout each week to have as insurance just in case Crosby or J.K. Scott, for that matter, in an emergency situation where they're unable to play on Sunday. They've had those tryout players in town going through COVID-19 protocol just in case they need to call on them and sign them in an emergency situation on Saturday, which we saw earlier this season when J.K. Scott didn't fly out with the team on Saturday against the Indianapolis Colts, and the Packers signed punter Drew Kaiser on an emergency basis, and Kaiser was on hand in Indianapolis. However, Scott was ultimately able to punt. So they've been going through similar scenarios throughout the season. Now they have someone in-house. They don't have to keep working players out every week. They have the insurance going into the playoffs, and perhaps they like Molson enough that they want to see him in training camp next season. They didn't want another team to scoop him up. So I think a little bit of both could be in play there. Let's go over to Mike on Facebook. Mike, hello. Should the Packers over-focus on running back Derrick Henry and possibly let quarterback Ryan Tannehill beat them, or should they try to strike a balanced defense and just let Henry have his 100 yards? Derrick Henry is on pace for almost, he may eclipse 2,000 rushing yards, which is absolutely mind-blowing, and it doesn't even sound like, I feel like that's a mistake coming out of my mouth. It doesn't even sound possible. How should the Packers approach attacking this Titans offense?
Well, you got to handle that guy or you have no chance. So they're going to have to put a lot of resources to it. I was, I got asked this on the chat I did yesterday. I'm kind of thinking, if he rushes if they hold him to, I don't know, under 120 or even maybe even 130, there's a decent chance that's good enough, plenty good enough, really. It's if he just has a huge day or if his average per carry is really high. Either of those would bode really poorly for the Packers. But, if you're playing them, Tannehill's not bad, and he's a good deep ball thrower, it sounds like. And A.J. Brown's a good receiver, although he didn't practice today. He's got an ankle injury, I guess. But if you're going to have somebody beat you, you're going to make Tannehill beat you before you're going to let Henry beat you. So I would assume you err in stopping the run, but the question just points out the problem you face, because you do everything you can to stop the run. At a certain point, they can just kill you in the air. And Tannehill, in the last 2 seasons, has hit on a lot of deep balls and big plays. And, having Henry helps him so much, and they are the number 1 scoring team in the league. So that's why they're just tough to defend, is they have a decent quarterback and a great running back.
Derrick Henry has been held to under 100 rushing yards in 5 games this season. So it's possible. It can be done. Will the Packers be able to do it? We'll find out. Thanks so much, Mike, for your question. Let's go over to Jason on Facebook. A lot of good questions from everyone today. Jason wants to know, do you have any concerns with guard Lucas Patrick because he was manhandled last week? And when do you expect the offensive line to be fully healthy? Will the offensive line never be fully healthy? I guess it won't, because technically their starting offensive line included Lane Taylor. However, he sustained a season-ending injury in the very first game of the season. So the offensive line will never be healthy. However, it has an opportunity to get at least as close to full health as possible, with center Corey Linsley expected to return. It's looking like he will be able to return this weekend. He has been on injured reserve with a knee injury for the past 3 weeks. Linsley practiced in all 3 days this week, so that's boding well for his availability this upcoming Sunday. The big question is, with Linsley returning to center, Elton Jenkins presumably kicking back to left guard, what does that mean for Lucas Patrick? Because Billy Turner had been playing right guard, Rick Wagner had been playing right tackle, and that combination was seemingly working pretty well, except last week the Packers gave up 5 sacks.
Yeah, they could do it either way. They could bench Patrick, or they could bench Wagner and kick Turner back out to right tackle. I'm wondering the same thing with Patrick. He played, fairly, pretty well all season. And the thing I wonder is, did he just run into a really, really bad matchup against a super talented big guy in Derrick Brown, who they're just not going to see many guys like him, and so it's only a problem against, just a couple of teams in the league. And I don't know the answer to the question. Patrick's more a quickness guy. Brown is just a huge, powerful, really talented young player. He was the 7th pick of the draft this year. And that's the guy who was tossed, basically pushing them all around last Sunday or Saturday. So I don't know the answer to the question. What's the best way to go? Wagner's played pretty well, but I think he's got his problems with speed rushers, which could be a problem down the road. So I think they could go either way. I don't know in the end if it makes all that much difference, but I wonder the same thing about Patrick, and he's not the stoutest guy. Look, I'm just guessing here, but I'm kind of inclined to think that that was just a game that was a really bad matchup for him, and that they'll stick with him. But I don't know, and who knows? And we'll find out on Sunday night, unless you've seen something at practice. I don't know if you've been out to practice at all. If you've seen something to give you an indication of that.
I have no indication. We're going to find out on Sunday if Corey Linsley is healthy enough to play. If he's not, then our conversation is meaningless. They'll likely roll out the same offensive line they did last week. However, if Linsley is able to go, then they're going to have to do some reshuffling. Thanks so much, Jason, for your question. Let's go over to Dale on Facebook. Dale, thanks for joining us. Dale wants to know, which running back are the Packers looking to re-sign next season? 2 of the Packers running backs become 2021 free agents in 2021. Running backs Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams. Which is more likely to stay with the Packers next season?
I still think it's Jones. I don't know if they'll be able to get an extension done with them with the agent change. For the regular season, there's only a week and less than a week and a half to go. They can do it anytime, even during the playoffs too. I'm just guessing. I mean, there's no inside information here, but I still am thinking that if they don't re-sign him, they're going to tag him. It's $10 million with a running back. Really, that's not a bad way to go, because then you're not putting future money into it. Going year by year with a running back, if you're the team, there's a big advantage to that as far as the risk goes for the guy getting hurt and declining quickly. I just think the difference, in my opinion, the difference between him and Williams is huge. And there's with the way the cap and the money and the revenue is down this year and affecting next year's cap and money available, there's just no way they'd re-sign both. So I'm thinking Jones will be back one way or the other, either with a new deal or on the tag. That's just my best guess.
Thanks so much, Dale, for your question. Let's go back over to Smumster on Periscope. They say that defensive coordinator Mike Pettin should play extra linebackers to help stop running back Derrick Henry. How much more often do you think Mike Pettin will have 2 linebackers on the field and players like Kamal Martin, Chris Barnes, or Christian Kirksey in an effort to stop the run?
So I'm forgetting what the numbers were. I had Pro Football Focus got back to me yesterday with, or earlier this week, with the percent that they play base, nickel, and dime. And base was 20%, and dime was I think it was around 55%, something like that, and nickel was 20 to 25%. So they play more dime than anything, and I would think that it will be the opposite. I don't think we'll see nearly as much dime. There's going to be third downs where it's out there, but again, to stop this running back, especially because he's a power guy, I would think at worst they're going to be in real nickel most of the time with 2 real inside linebackers. And I would guess we'll see, a decent amount of base, which you don't see much base defense, in the NFL anymore, and especially out of the Packers. But I would think we'd see, which is basically a 5-man front, 3 defensive linemen, 2 outside linebackers, and then 2 inside linebackers to go with them. I would think we'd see that, much more than we have. And I would think this would be a game of mostly base and true nickel with 2 inside linebackers on the field most of the time.
Thanks so much, Smumster, for your great question. Let's go over to Kenny on Facebook. Kenny wants to know, do you think the Packers' run defense has improved since last year? Even over the last couple of games, the Packers' run defense has improved. They held the Lions to under 100 rushing yards, and they were close with the Panthers. However, quarterback Teddy Bridgewater scrambled for a bunch of yards. How much has the run defense improved from this season to last season?
I don't know. I had some real doubts. You watched that Minnesota game. Sure wasn't quite as bad as, but it sure looked a lot like that San Francisco playoff game last year, and that wasn't that long ago. So, I think they're still, like I've said before, guilty till proven innocent. They have played better defense the last month, and I don't think all of it's just because of the opponent, but we'll find out. We'll get a lot better feel Sunday night how much of it might have been opponent, how much of it is just internal improvement and getting better stopping the run and getting better play at inside linebacker, with having Barnes, who's an upgrade, and maybe if they play Kamal Martin more too.
Thanks so much, Kenny, for your question, and thank all of you so much for joining us tonight. We will be back on Sunday to preview Sunday Night Football, get you set for the game. Plus, we'll also I think we'll be live the morning after the game as well to wrap it up. So make sure you come back to us wherever you're watching us today. For Pete Dougherty, I'm Olivia Reiner. Merry Christmas. We will see you next time.